Hey guys, it's Charles D'Angelo. Thanks for tuning in. Today, my message for you is something that I want you to consider. I bumped into a young man who struggled for a long time with a pattern of using substances to change how he felt. For a long time, he was struggling with alcoholism. He struggled and dabbled in some drug use. Eventually, he turned that into the use of steroids and to some things that he was working to try to change how he felt about himself using something. And while I never dabbled in those types of substances, I certainly dabbled in food. I mean, weighing 360 pounds at one time in my life, it was easy for me to run up to 7-Eleven or to run through McDonald's or Burger King or any number of places, or to pick up the cordless phone and call Pizza Hut and have something delivered that I knew would change me almost instantly, or at least in the moment I thought it would make me feel better, only leaving me feeling more and more empty after I scarfed down an entire pizza, or I had eaten an entire 2 packages of M&Ms at one sitting, whatever it was. And I think the issue is the same for both the young man who I am talking about who was struggling with some drug use, and then my issue, which you could equate food to being a form of a drug, of course. And that is, we get into certain patterns in our life. And when we start to tell ourselves that, well, you know, the reason I can't really get out of that pattern is because I'm an addict, or I have this or that wrong with me, we create more of a reason or more of a story in our mind to support the negative choices. Now, I'm not at all saying that the ideas or what you've been through, or the tragedy or the suffering or the pain that you went through that caused you to use something to change how you feel, that wasn't factual, that it didn't happen. But what I'm trying to say is that there is probably a more efficient, more effective way, if you're interested, in changing how you feel without having the tragic, catastrophic cost on your health that overeating or drug use can have. And the way that you really begin to transform your entire lifestyle, and which what I've used with now thousands of people that I've had the opportunity, the privilege, I've been humbled to be able to counsel and coach, is you really need to first create for yourself a vision of your future. You need to really get detailed about the direction you're heading. When I talked to this young man, the first question I asked him are, what are his goals for the next 5 years? He came up to me because after a recent bout of using some substances, he had some really negative consequences come about, and he felt lost. He wants to feel better about himself, and he really looks very, very awesome. I mean, he looks incredibly fit, but isn't that the case for most of us? Most of us don't see us for how we actually are. We have this opinion of ourselves that may have been formed earlier in life. Often I update my phone, my software on my phone or on my iPad, and I think that sometimes we update our technology more than we do our own mindsets about ourselves. I mean, what references, what experiences are you going back to in your head to support who you believe yourself to be today? Because if you're going back to a reference of poor choices, maybe when you were younger, when you weren't as informed, when you didn't have the experiences you now have, you may be operating out of an old identity, someone no longer appropriate, or who's no longer who you are today. Because you've simply focused yourself in on this narrow experience that was 5, 10, maybe even more recent than that, years ago. So you really need to upgrade and update your mental picture of yourself by coming up with not only a compelling vision for your future, but also a list of all the great things about who you are today. When I had the opportunity to speak to this young man, he and I began to talk about all the qualities, all of the assets he has in his life. And it's far too often we know more about the things that are liabilities in our life than we do about our own assets. So if you take a list of all of your assets, what's good about you, you know, how disciplined you are, what are the challenges you've already overcome, when you really begin to laser in on those things rather than the things that you may have made mistakes about, or maybe you could have learned from or done something differently, if you made it through all those things and you're still here, then you obviously are a success. If you're listening to this right now, no matter how much you weigh, no matter what challenges you're dealing with, if you are tuned in right now, obviously you're the type of person who's interested in taking control of their life and really taking themselves to a whole new level of experience. And that's who this video is for. You, that type of person who's ready to really transform the experience you have on a day-to-day basis. So the first thing you need to get clear on is a list of compelling goals for yourself, things you're headed toward. Because when I asked this young man that question, his answer was he didn't have a list. and I can relate. I was once at that place where I was more concerned about the immediate than I was about my future. I wasn't thinking about the direction I was heading. I was just thinking about changing the pain of the moment. I wasn't thinking about the pain I would experience continuing simply to pacify or to numb myself with a poor choice. Food for me. For other people, it might be a cigarette. For other people, it might be drugs. It could be any number of things. But the reality is this. The choices you're having every single day, the choices you're making every single day are having a major impact on the direction you're heading. And it's all too often that it's a very subtle influence, the things you're doing, that take you one way or the other. It's not some massive thing that totally throws your life off track. It's a consistent pattern of bad choices, day after day, week after week, month after month, that ultimately lead you to a place you never intended to be. So first, get clear on where you're headed. Are the choices you're making in the moment taking you closer to where you want to be 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, 2 years from now? And if the answer to that question is no, then I offer you this idea. Consider some new choices. Think how you can preserve the intention of whatever you're doing right now. That is, whatever you're using to change how you feel, how can you change how you feel, not using something that's having that negative effect? And I'm not here to say you're wrong for doing what you're doing. And I told that young man that. We all have choices to make. And while some of the choices we all can make could be illicit or bad or illegal or wrong, it's not my place or your place or anyone's place to judge another person's behavior. All I can offer you is perhaps a better path to take to get the same feeling that you're looking to get. So when I began to talk to this young man, we talked about his goals. One of his goals is financial independence, being able to live off of the interest of his assets, of the things that he owns. And right now, he really doesn't have a plan for doing that. Secondly, he wants to be in a relationship. He wants to have more certainty in his life. He wants to be able to have someone to share the juice of life with. And doing the thing he's doing right now, using different substances to feel better about himself, is only affirming an underlying lie about who he is as a man. And that is that he's not good enough and that he needs something to be able to be adequate. And the reality is we all can feel inadequate in certain dimensions of our life. If we were all up to par, what would life be for? We're all meant to grow and to learn and to evolve into something more, to become more. And again, that goes back to what I said. Updating your mindset and your identity, who you see yourself as being. Because if you're operating out of this mentality, well, I'm an addict, and that was the first thing he told me is, you don't understand, Charles, the reason I go from this substance, I did drugs for a while, and now I dabbled in this stuff, and now I'm doing steroids, is become an addict. Well, I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm just saying I think it would be more empowering to consider this. We all get into patterns of behavior. We all get into routines. We all do what we do to try to get certain feelings in life. And the feelings that we have are a result of how we feel about ourselves, the interpretations we have of what's going on around us. In other words, whatever meaning we're giving to what's happening. Two people can go through the exact same experience, and one grows from it and thinks it's the best thing that ever happened to them, and another person's totally destroyed and feels like their life's over. What's the difference, right? It's in the meaning or the interpretation or whatever symbolic thought they give to the experience they had. So however you represent that stuff in your head, whatever's going on in your world, is going to have a huge influence on how you feel. Think about death, for example. We all lose people, right? For some specific religions and faith-based people, they believe death is a passing, a celebration, a time to move to another level. For other people, death is the end, it's blackness, it's terrible, there's nothing more. Obviously, depending on which belief system you choose to operate from, you're going to have an entirely different set of feelings if you believe that when you die, it's over, there's nothing more, what's the point? As compared to there's a higher power, there's an energy, we're all connected, we all have a purpose in life, right? I mean, there's a difference. And I'm not saying which one to believe. I'm just offering you the idea that depending on how you represent things in your mind, you're going to get an entirely different feeling about those things. So be very, very, very careful of whose belief system and what belief system you are following. A lot of what we do is so unconscious, we haven't given it any consideration. Think about this. What leg do you put in your pants every day when you wake up and get dressed? Now, when you think about it, you probably can think right or left, right? But the reality is, where did you learn that? How long ago did you learn that? Have you ever even thought about it? The point I make is a lot of what you're doing isn't even conscious. So it's critical you become aware of how you are identifying yourself. What's the identity that you give to yourself? Are you smart or stupid? I mean, there's a huge difference in identifying yourself as a stupid person or saying, I occasionally make stupid decisions. I make stupid decisions sometimes, but I don't label myself as stupid. So you've got to be careful about how you label. Be careful of giving yourself the identity of an addict. Be careful of giving yourself the label of not intelligent or whatever it might be. Any disempowering label has a huge ramification because it puts a limit on you. So when you hit a point in your life where you're about to do something new and you say, well, that's just not me, I just don't do that, that indicates to you real clearly that you have labeled yourself in a certain way, and this new behavior, this new opportunity that you could engage in is contradictory to the label you've given to yourself. So if you want to enjoy the new opportunity, there's one simple thing you need to do. Change the way you label yourself. You change the label and you'll change your experience, and you open yourself up to an entirely new world of possibilities, of all sorts of excitement, of joy, of pleasure, of juice back into your life. So once you've really gotten clear on how you've labeled yourself in the past and how you want to label yourself now, create for yourself that list of compelling goals. You know, what are the things you want to have achieved? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to visit? Who do you want to meet? What type of relationship do you want to have? What kind of house do you want to live in? How much money do you want to earn every year? What type of contribution to humanity do you want to have? You know, what are the things that you really want to work toward? Get clear on those. Secondly, come up with a list of compelling reasons to achieve those things. You know what I found in my life? I'll do a lot more for other people, or I at least used to do a lot more for other people than I did for myself. But I quickly learned a couple years ago, as I was evaluating my own thinking, you know, why is that? Why am I willing to do more for others and make others happy than I would make myself happy? And the reality is for a long time I spent my life getting charged up by pleasing other people. So I had a difficult time early on telling people no, saying, no, you can't do this. No, I can't do that right now. I didn't have real clear boundaries or distinctions of what was good for me as compared to what would be good for the other person and me at the same time. So you've got to get clear on the reasons you want to achieve things. Now, if you're like the former me, or like even me today, I still love doing things for people. I mean, it's one of the greatest joys and privileges I have, and the more successful I become, the more joy I take in sharing it with other people. The thing you need to get clear on is, why do you want to achieve these things? For example, let's say that for you, money's not a big deal. I know for me, one thing I've always hated is accounting. I hate having to balance, debits and credits and all this stuff. So I never got into really going after money. That was never my motive. My motive was to serve people, to share passion, to help people transform their lives, to see life in a new way, to achieve anything they put themselves out to go after, to help them see it through. That's what really charged my life up. But I also realized there was a reality. To be able to be in business, there has to be a balance, right? So I said to myself, how can I get myself motivated to be more responsible in that dimension? Well, I said there's some things I want to be able to do. There's some foundations I want to be able to support. There's some charities I want to be able to contribute to. And that served to really motivate me to get my financial states in order. So you can find for yourself, what are the things for you that are going to motivate you? If you're having difficulty with your weight and you're having difficulty every day making sure you're staying consistent with the food plan you're on, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why is this an absolute must for me? Why is this something that I cannot let myself, my coach, my family down about? Because people often talk about the cost of being healthy. It's so expensive to buy the right food. It's so time consuming to plan all your foods ahead. It takes so much energy to be able to eat at the times you're supposed to and not eat with your friends, and to tell people no. Just yesterday I had a woman come to my office and she literally said she can't go to a friend's house and bring her own food. And I said, well, why can't you? She said, well, it'd be so rude. And I said, are you there to engage in the food or indulge in the food? Or are you there for the people? And she just kind of looked at me and crossed her arms and closed herself off like, well, I never thought about that. The truth is you can do anything you put yourself out there to do. Start to have enough courage to say what you want and to assert yourself so that you understand what you do for yourself is going to benefit other people. When you improve the quality of your own health, it improves the relationships you have. It improves how much you contribute to your business or workplace. It can totally improve the quality of parenting that you do every single day with your 2 children, 3 children, however many you have, 1 maybe, it has a huge ramification on everything. So once you get clear on the reasons, it's much easier to stay consistent. And you have to become assertive enough to realize that we only have this one life as far as we know. I don't know what comes after this. I do believe, of course, in God and a higher power, and I'm sure there's more than what we see. But what I do know is this. We all have that little voice on our shoulder that tells us the clock is ticking. It's critical that you avoid disaster where you can. One thing you can do to avoid disaster is make very good, disciplined choices, albeit they're small, but make the smart choices. You can't, the old saying, eat an apple a day, keep the doctor away. You can't wait till the end of 3 months and on that 90th day eat a total of 100 apples to counter 90 days of bad choices. You can't do that. It just doesn't work that way. So you've got to be consistent in your approach. So after you've come up with your identity and you've started to think about how have I labeled myself before as compared to who I am today, where have I misassigned or not really properly interpreted my past experience, I looked at things that have happened as disempowering rather than empowering. Once you get clear on all that stuff, and you create a list of compelling goals, and then you come up with the reasons, then you need to come up with an action plan. The action plan is the set of rules, if you will, that you're going to follow consistently until you get the result that you set out to get. Now, there's nothing more pleasurable, in my experience, that I've ever had than being able to not only have that list of all your goals written out, know the reasons behind them clearly, how it's going to benefit you, how it's going to benefit others, how it's going to benefit the community, society as a whole, if that's something that really charges you up. And then after you achieve it, being able to cross that off the list. I set goals when I was 8, 9 years old to be able to meet Elton John one day. Just recently I had the opportunity to share my story with him. So things like that, sometimes there's a gestation period to goals. So you have to understand, just because something doesn't happen in the time period that you set, okay, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. In other words, God's delays are not God's denials. Sometimes things have a certain period of time depending on the type of seed you're planting, right? If you think about this almost as an agricultural metaphor, if you're going to plant seeds outside, some things take longer to grow than others. You don't get impatient and go outside and dig it up and say, see, it's not working. That's a recipe for failure. That's a recipe for destruction. Get really, really sharp on understanding that everything's a process. Everything's growing or really working towards an ultimate outcome. And the way that you make sure that the outcomes you set come to fruition are nurturing those things, keeping guard of those things, watching those things. And again, it all comes back to, if I was to say what it comes back to, is who you see yourself as. If you see yourself as a person because of your early experiences in life, maybe you grew up with nothing, maybe you, like that young man I spoke to, did some things you're not proud of, God doesn't want you to sit here feeling guilty about that and limiting the rest of your life because of something that happened when you were 17 or 18 years old. Okay? First, forgive yourself. We all make stupid choices. It doesn't mean you're stupid. The sheer fact that you feel bad about it should be proof positive that you know that it was wrong and that you're willing to make amends for it. So simply do what you feel is appropriate to wipe that off of the slate, to clear the air with whomever you might feel guilt with that you did something wrong toward, whether it be your family, whether it be your friends, whether it be yourself. One of the hardest things to do is to learn to forgive yourself and to see yourself as flawed. None of us are perfect. We all make stupid choices, but by no means are you stupid because you make a stupid choice. We all can get off of track. We all can lose our way. We all can find times that are so challenging and upsetting that we really lose our center. And this video, the intention is to speak to you when you're feeling that way. To remind you that you do have a purpose, that there's a reason you tuned into this video today. And I'm going way over the time that I intended to. I'm actually supposed to be working out. But the point I make is that you don't have to sit here today feeling guilty about what happened a year ago. Okay, if you don't unhook your history, you're never going to be able to reel in your future. You're never going to be able to bring the blessings into your life that really you're intended to have because you're blocking them. You're saying, see, no, all these things that are so good that should be, that are happening, they can't be. They're going to go away. I mean, have you ever found yourself when things are really going well, you just anticipate a catastrophe lurks around the corner? Why is that? Well, your nervous system, the survival instinct is limiting you. It says that in order to survive, you have to be afraid. In today's day and age, the threats are so far less, especially in America, are so far less than they were when humanity started to evolve and when our neurological systems were really wired. So you've got to update yourself. Start to remind yourself of all the things that you're good at. Start to remind yourself of all the things, the adversities that you've overcome. And remind yourself that using a substance, using food, using a drug, using alcohol, any number of things that change the immediate state that you're in but have a negative consequence are only serving to reaffirm a lie about you, that you need something outside of yourself to make yourself good enough, to make yourself lovable, and to be able to change how you feel. That you need that pill, that you need that shot, that you need that drink, that you need that cupcake, that you need that cookie, that you need that handful of popcorn. None of those things are true. If you want to change how you feel, there's a real surefire way to doing it. Get out and get moving. Get to the gym. Go for a walk around the neighborhood. Clear your mind. Think about it. That's something that automatically can change how you feel. You can come up with an entire list of things that will preserve the intention of the bad choice, that will make you feel better about yourself, without having that long-term negative implication, and reaffirm that lie about yourself that you're not good enough. You're feeling down, you're feeling lonely, you're feeling desperate, you feel tempted, reach out to a friend. Reach out to someone who loves you. Talk to someone who knows what you're capable of, who knows the highest you, and will remind you of that truth. Because while all of us go through dark times, we all have that little spark within us that sometimes needs to be reignited by those we love and by those that we've invested in. So make the decision not to use those things. Make the decision to get excited about your future, to get off of your history, to stop labeling yourself with these historical definitions that were really inappropriate, that were formed at a time when you didn't have the insight you currently have. Reinterpret those past things so that you use them as fuel to get you to where you deserve to be. I'll talk to you soon. God bless you, and keep working hard.